Okay, welcome everyone. I believe it's the top of the hour and we'll get started. My name is Mary Minix and I have the honor to be on the RVWA board and also the honor to lead the Education Task Force. And we're excited to have you a part of our summer series. This is our second session and the session is on navigating change. And we are very happy to welcome Alissa Reyes. Alissa is a seasoned human resource executive with a favor for coaching leaders, driving cultural transformation, and aligning talent with strategic initiatives. She has experience in both public and private sectors. She excels in managing downsizing, facilitating growth, and leading company transformation. She's currently serving as a Senior Vice President of HR and Administration at Bedford. Alissa leads HR, IT, and engineering teams, driving strategic planning and business transformation projects across the U.S. Her previous roles before this role includes leadership positions at Stanley Black & Decker and GE. Alissa holds an MBA from the George Washington University and a BBA from Central Michigan University. She's actively involved in industry associations, holds multiple professional certifications, and has been recognized for the RV Pro 40 Under 40. With that, I will welcome Alissa.
Thank you. First of all, I'm going to take a very informal approach to this session. I think, change is something we can talk about, chat about, have some fun with as we go through this session. A little intimidated with my bio reading. It sounds like I'm very poised and professional, but I really take an informal approach to this kind of stuff. So I want to today just go through, I want to understand, I have an idea of the purpose of the workshop, but I really want to get the feelings of the folks on the phone on what they're looking to get through this workshop. But I think really understanding what change is, I'm going to spend a little bit of time on that, how we can navigate change effectively. I want to maybe encourage you to initiate change in areas of your life, professionally or personally, that aren't working well for you. And then I'd love to leave some time at the end for a group discussion. So I know Mary read my bio, but I thought I'd kind of start with a little bit more personal. Who is Alissa? So first, I'm a mom. I kind of start with that. And I think as we're talking about change, having children was the most significant change in my life. It's something that I really is my top priority, like raising good humans. And I'm going to tie that in a little bit as we go through this presentation. As mentioned, HR business transformation. Again, prior to Thetford, I worked with 3 large Fortune 100 companies. I actually relocated 9 times over the 15 years before the last 5 of working at Thetford. And I'll talk a little bit about that a little more in depth when I share a personal story here shortly. I'm a certified leadership coach, and managing above the line was in the title. We're going to talk a little bit about that. I'm certified in leadership circle profile. I'm looking at the leader as a whole person, not just a position title, if you will. So we'll talk about that. I'm also a coachee. I am kind of obsessed with just personal development, maybe personal self-help, books and things of that nature. But I do invest money, personal funds on the side to meet with people who I think can really help me gain a perspective on life. Right now I have a coach, Steph T is her name. She is a NLP master. If you guys have never heard of it, it's a neuro linguistics programming professional. And she's just been incredible in, helping me think about my thoughts, how I talk to myself, the stories I tell myself, and helping me really stick to new habits I'm trying to change, if you will. So I'll talk more about that. I'm also addicted to personal change. Like I mentioned, I relocated 9 times. And actually earlier this year, maybe sparked by my mom's retirement and move to Florida, I was feeling like I needed to move. And thankfully, my husband is a level-headed man. And we decided that we're just going to get new furniture and I'll be okay with staying put. So And hence my personal coach. I'm trying to recover from my addiction to personal change. And we'll talk a little bit more about that too. So before we dive in, if you guys could use the chat, I just want to understand what you want to get out of the next hour, and I can kind of formulate what I'm going to talk about to maybe what the group kind of consensus is here. So if you could in the chat, pick A, B, C, D, or E, and you can pick more than one. Just put in an A if you're just here to casually listen. Put a B if you're here because you need some support on a personal change. C if it's a professional change. D if you are just, I need to ignite change in my life. I'm unhappy and I need change. Then I want that ignition of it. And then E is other. And if you're comfortable, I'd love you to put like E just here because Alyssa's really cool. kind of thing. So, all right, D. Okay, lots of D's and A's. Okay. Ooh, this is cool. Okay. All right, good. So a little bit of everything, but I'm seeing a lot of A's, a lot of D's. So I'll definitely try to focus on the igniting, help my team navigate change better. Okay, perfect. Yes, I understand being a change champion, but needing to inspire others. So definitely. Okay, good. Okay, so just diving in, purposes of the workshop, we want to understand the dynamics of change, develop adaptive and practical strategies to effectively adapt to the changes, especially in our industry. I mean, I've worked in automotive, tools, aerospace, and this is the craziest industry ever, very cyclical. And the amount of times the RVIA changes their build numbers can give you whiplash. But also talk about it in your personal life too. And then sounds like a lot of you are in the mood for a little change initiation, so we'll spend time with that. All right, so understanding change. First things first, change sucks. So, but it's necessary for growth, and growth's a good thing. So I think we all, one of my favorite quotes is the comfort zone's a beautiful place, but nothing ever grows there. And in order for us to evolve as humans, organizations, societies, we have to change. It's just hard when you're getting out of that comfort zone. So there's a lot of change, there's societal, global, et cetera. But for the purposes of today's discussion, we'll talk about organizational change and we'll talk about personal change. All right, so organizational change, I'm not intending to read all this to you, but just kind of walk through. These are some of the main categories of organizational change. And if you guys have experienced this, again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you can put it in the chat if you're comfortable. One is strategic change. So this is when an organization changes the overall purpose, goals, directions. This could be if the business is entering new markets, gets a new product line or changes their core business model. Structural changes. This is, change to the organizational hierarchy, reporting relationships, overall structures. It could be a leadership change. It could be a combination of functions. It could also be mergers, acquisitions. Process change. This could be, streamlining of workflows, new procedures, things like that. Cultural change, and cultural change is kind of foundational from my perspective to all these things. But it's really, changes that are impacting the culture, and that could be impacting the underlying cultural beliefs, norms, and behaviors of the people in the organization. That is often stemmed from new ownership, leadership, or any of these other changes. Technological change, this could be like implementing a new ERP system, or things of that nature. And then there's people-centric changes. This is also including the culture. And just kind of following some of the news and some of the challenges. I know there's been, a lot of reductions in force, which can often lead to the structural change side of things and obviously have a cultural impact from that perspective. All right. And then on the personal change front, I kind of just put this down to a few different ones. Obviously, career change, transitioning to a new job. I mean, that could be a promotion. It could be changing industries. It could be, you know, just recognizing that you want to make a change and starting to put those steps into process. Lifestyle change, like maybe, you know, it seems like I'm always trying a diet or a health program. Some of my colleagues can attest, but, you know, hey, I'm tired of, you know, my body hurting. I want to get in shape. I want to have more energy. Health change is maybe, you know, really dealing with a little bit, maybe more of an extreme health chronic issue, mental illness, or, you know, dealing with recovery from an injury. There's relocation, relationship change. I kind of put all relationship change in personal, including coworkers. I mean, that could be, you know, not only like getting divorced or married or becoming a parent or becoming a caregiver, or, but it's also those relationships at work. And we'll talk a little bit more about that here soon. Financial change, educational change, pursuing new learning opportunities, and personal growth and development, focusing on self-improvement and professional development and or personal development. So that could be, you know, hey, I really want to get better at emotional intelligence and, you know, or new hobbies or things of that nature. So there is a lot of change, and it seems like based on the chat, a lot of people are going through a lot of different things right now. So before we kind of dive into some of the key concepts, I want to talk about grace. So if you're going through any or many of the changes we talked about, make sure to give yourself grace. You know, I think sometimes when a change occurs, you know, especially women, we have a tendency to say, oh, I shouldn't feel like that. I need to just, you know, put my head down and, you know, work through this, or, you know, why is this impacting me so much? And, you know, it's okay to feel the feelings. When you have feelings, they are valid. And it's important to address those feelings. And so I just put a few things on here. You know, grace could include, you know, self-compassion, and that's, you know, just acknowledging, you know, where you are and acknowledging that you need to, you know, take care of yourself. Acceptance is embracing, you know, yourself. And hey, if you're an emotional person that feels things, you know, that's part of the human experience. And, you know, having acceptance for that and finding adaptive ways to deal with that. Forgiveness, just letting go of the guilt or the self-blame, patience, giving yourself time and the space to go through that change. And then the self-care, so prioritizing your well-being from that perspective. You know, personally, when you know, I'm going through a lot of change, especially at work, I'm leading a lot of change projects. Sometimes I have good habits when things are a little more steady, like exercise, eating well. And I try to be very cognizant of keeping those habits going, but oftentimes during change, we tend to go away from those habits. And so like really being, having that self-awareness of, hey, there's a big change coming up. Let me make sure my schedule is built in to take care of myself during those times. Because yeah, you know, you could drink a lot of wine and forget about your workouts and not take care of yourself. But, you know, at the end of the day, you know, it's your body, your mind. And if you don't, you know, take care of it, you're not really good for others from that perspective. We'll talk more about that too. All right. So from a reactions to change, so all people react differently. There are a lot of influences on how we react to change. It could be our personality, past experiences. We'll dive into that a little bit more. Our support systems and whether those support systems are adaptive or maladaptive, our healthy habits and how ingrained they are to us, and then our perceptions of the change. So I want to spend a little bit of time on this model. This is emotions in the change process. This model's from Kubler-Ross change model. Actually, I studied it when I was studying leadership for my MBA, and had to dust off my knowledge on it. I want to say, like, this doesn't necessarily capture all of the emotions, right? Sometimes, especially as organizations go through reductions in force, fear and anxiety are a very valid feeling. But for the purposes of this model, this is these are the underlying, I'll say, emotions that are established in the model. And so as we kind of walk through this, This is also aligned to kind of the 5 stages of grief as well. And obviously when you're having change, you're kind of saying goodbye to something that was and what the new situation is from that perspective. So for shock and denial, normally it's just absorbing the change and what's happening. From a denial perspective, this is often, individuals refusing to acknowledge or accept the change. Oftentimes, people will just kind of avoid, like, oh, I can't believe that happened. I don't want to deal with it. I'll, deal with it when I need to, or downplaying the significance of a change. Anger is a very common emotion as reality sets in. Sometimes there's frustration, irritability. Sometimes there can be confusion, uncertainty. Then there's bargaining. Individuals may attempt to negotiate or make deals to avoid the change, seek compromises, things of that nature. Depression, which is a sense of loss or helplessness. They might withdraw, reduce motivation. And then I think eventually you get to the acceptance stage, which is, understanding and embracing the new reality. So I'll say from a personal perspective, it's often, these are kind of the changes folks go through. But I like this model a little bit more. It goes into a little bit more detail, especially as it relates to organizational change. Because sometimes in personal change, you don't always have the opportunity to exit the situation. But you definitely have the option for, holding on to his hostility versus just accepting the change and moving on. So, I kind of think of this as, actually, let me walk you through it and then I'll kind of share a couple stories with you. So obviously all the things we just talked about, and then you kind of get to this point of self-blame or bargaining. There's kind of 3 different paths that can be taken. One is exiting. So let's kind of walk through a large organizational change. Maybe you don't agree with it. Maybe you do, and you're kind of working out of maybe fear or anxiety. Are you in the next wave? Especially with the cyclical nature of our RV industry. So obviously shock, denial, anger, bargaining. There's ultimately a decision all employees or people going through these type of experiences need to make. One of them is exiting the situation or organization or role or moving roles. And that is absolutely acceptable from a change perspective. Sometimes, again, each person will go through each of these stages quickly or slowly or pass them, without much feeling at all. So that there's definitely that depression stage. And if you sit here a long time and don't get through those repressed negative emotions, you can land in this hostility, which is where you don't change, where there is, I think we all probably have worked with, hopefully you're not actively working with too many folks where they're just sit in this stage. I think you know those individuals of, folks that, might try to undermine change or they're very negative and they can't get past it. Obviously negative feelings are valid feelings. It's just how long you sit there. And actually I have a friend that went through a divorce, and I think she's just kind of sat here for a long time, and it's not a good place to be. And so what we want to do and focus on during this session is really kind of getting up through this line, really getting to the acceptance, experimentation with new ways, problem solving and learning to work in new ways, and that integration. Because at the end of the day, the change is happening and you want to make sure you're taken care of and healthy and feeling, positive and renewed about the experience as well. So I want to share a little story, personal story, before we dive into the actual navigating change part, which will be a lot more interactive. So this is my husband and 2 kids. This picture is about 5 years old. And my daughter, the small one, had just turned 1, and my other one on the right was about, going to be about 3. And this is in the lobby of our temp living apartment. So I worked with Stanley Black & Decker. I was living in Michigan, and I got a call from our corporate. They said, hey, we want you to lead a business unit and move out to Baltimore. and for HR. So I talked to my husband. He ended up quitting his job. We have two small kids. And again, I'd relocated a lot before this, but it is way harder to do it with children. And so ultimately, he ended up quitting his job because we were having trouble finding childcare for our kids. And we bought this 1979 house. It was super old. We ended up totally gutting it, remodeling it. So to kind of put this into perspective, this is 2019. I accepted the role in February of 2019, and I started traveling back and forth from February to April to Maryland from Michigan. And I'm kind of working and traveling, and we're trying to find a house and relocate the kids. We finally get to temp living while our house was being remodeled in April, May timeframe. And my husband's kind of stay-at-home dad at this point. We ultimately move into our house late May. Meanwhile, I am absolutely loving my job. I'm in our global tools division. There's 5 business units, and I'm the HR leader for one of the 5 business units. So we're not even in our house for 4 weeks, and I had an idea that something was happening just based on some executive meetings I was having, that there was going to be a large reorganization. And I went to the president of the business unit I reported to, and I said, "Can you please tell me what's going on? I'm getting the feeling something's happening, and I just want to be filled in so I can be an effective HR partner." And so he said, "We didn't want to tell you because we know you just relocated here and your husband left his job and you sold your house in Michigan, but we're going to be eliminating the business unit you're leading." And so, I kind of panicked at the time. I probably did some maladaptive behaviors like drinking too much wine and ruminating on my thoughts. But I kind of want to walk you through this just from that perspective and kind of share with you how it ended. So obviously shock, right? Just relocated my whole family across the US. I am, having denial. How could the organization not know that they're going to eliminate this business unit? And basically they were selling off a part of it, and they were taking the rest of the business unit and putting it in the other business units that all also had HR leaders. So there was some denial, like, oh my God, like, what was I thinking? I was mad at myself from an anger perspective, mad at the leadership team, just mad at the whole situation. And then, it got to a point where, hey, there's a lot of moving parts. Like, let me kind of figure out how to make this work. I ultimately ended up getting another job offer within the company, but it really didn't feel right. Actually, it was the leader and I weren't necessarily the same. We weren't going to work really well together, and I knew that if I didn't make a change and take the opportunity to just take the exit package, I would not be happy. One, having my kids away from their grandparents all the way in Maryland, and 2, it just wasn't the job that I signed up for. So ultimately, I ended up deciding to leave the organization, which was a very scary time because, as I mentioned, my husband was unemployed. I now do not have a job. And then we decided to put our new house that we just bought up for sale and live in my parents' upstairs, which I don't recommend in your mid-30s. But that was ultimately the path I took. And ultimately it led me to Thetford. I'm about to celebrate 5 years. Love the house I live in, got some new furniture coming. But ultimately that was the decision I made for myself through that process. And again, for me, I could have accepted the new role, even though it didn't feel right. I could have probably tried to make it work. But this is a good, acceptable decision as well. Another option is I could have accepted the job and then I could have sat here forever. Oh my God, I hate this job. This isn't what I moved out here for. I'm now stuck in Baltimore with no family, and my husband is going to be resentful because he left his career. And in the next stage, what we're going to talk about is really kind of navigating change and dealing with change. And our main goal here is that no one stays here. It's not good for anybody. Before we go into navigating change, I want to talk about repressed negative emotions. If any of you have been through therapy, you might be kind of an expert here. But repressed negative emotions are never good. First of all, negative emotions are good. It's absolutely okay to feel negative emotions, and those emotions are valid. You just don't want to stay in those emotions for too long, and you want to work through them essentially, and you don't want to avoid them. So I just kind of want to walk you through some of this. Obviously there's 6 kind of main negative emotions: anger, sadness, fear, hurt, guilt, and shame. And if you kind of go through each of these, when you repress these emotions and don't deal with them, they can have a mental and, basically a physical impact on your body. So obviously with anger, that blood pressure, cholesterol, heart attack. Sadness, it can weaken your immune system. Depression, obviously mental challenges from that perspective. Fear, you can overwork yourself, excessive stress, phobia, PTSD, lung disease, hurt, obviously low self-esteem, disease, guilt, lowered healing energy, and then there's shame, like low self-esteem, low confidence, autoimmune. So again, the emotions are important to feel, they're important to address, important to get through. But if you don't take care of them, you'll oftentimes see these things come up later in life. And then when a new change happens and another wave of transformation happens in your organization, or a relationship personally changes again, if you haven't addressed this, it will continue to kind of follow you from that perspective. So just to give you a quick example, let's take the example of someone, let's just take the example of someone being bullied during their school years, and they never dealt with that as association of like sadness, shame, fear, or the anger of it. Instead, they buried it and they never ever really addressed it. So it was a repressed negative emotion. So this might manifest itself in various ways. I mean, there could be definitely low self-esteem. They could have trouble trusting others when they actually enter the work environment. That trust could impact their professional relationships. There could be perfectionism tendencies where they'll compensate their feelings for inadequacy by trying to be that perfect person, for example. Emotional numbness. So again, I could go on and on forever about this topic. Actually, it's something that I'm learning a lot with my personal coach that I mentioned. But so it's important that you kind of recognize these as you're navigating through change. All right, so navigating change. So that's a little bit about change, how we experience it, the emotions we feel through the change process. Now I want to talk about adaptive, because one of our focuses is learning adaptive ways to deal with change and stress versus maladaptive. So adaptive is healthy coping mechanisms. Maladaptive is non-healthy coping mechanisms. So what I want you to do for this exercise is, if you don't mind, and again, if you're not comfortable, please don't feel like you need to. I'm going to pop up a word, and I want you to type bingo when I read that coping mechanism if it resonates with you. And you can type bingo on more than one. So, for example, if you're really good at emotional regulation, so if you're feeling angry, you take a walk, things of that nature, you would type bingo in your in the chat. All right. Now, let me get my screens here. All right. I'm set up. So emotional regulation is how you handle, it's managing, expressing emotions in a effective way. I always like to use, for emotional regulation, I like to use email as an example. You might get an email where like it's a little bit short, or maybe someone copied your manager, or it's like making you feel like you need to reply all to like protect yourself. And so you feel that emotion in your chest or your throat or your whole body, and you want to just like be a little aggressive or passive aggressive back. But for emotional regulation, you recognize that, you take a walk, you take a breather, you pick up the phone, talk to the individual. So that's a good example of like regulating that emotion. So again, if you ever feel that, if you feel like you're good at emotional regulation, type bingo in the chat. Emotional regulation is an adaptive way of dealing with those kind of things. Avoidance. So avoidance is obviously, not dealing with it, ignoring or delaying the change or the stressor rather than addressing them directly. So go ahead and type bingo. All right, got a couple bingos. All right, good. Emotional regulation. All right, so avoidance is obviously a maladaptive. I will say though, like sometimes it is nice to take like a day break, like, hey, I'm gonna deal with this tomorrow. It's not necessarily a bad thing to just take a break and a breather, go for a run. But if you see that you're avoiding continuously, that is maladaptive, not very healthy for you. Substance overuse. So I will type bingo in the chat because I tend to I'm like a wine connoisseur. I'll joke during times of stress and change. But it's overuse, right? It's more than your normal. And you might say, oh, I'll deal with, drinking too much wine or I'll say substance abuse. I'll even include things like social media or procrastination. But it's those things that are like you're not really addressing, and you're like, hey, I'll address this when we get past this time of change. So obviously that's maladaptive. So seeking social support. This is when you reach out to friends or coworkers to help you get through the change. Turning to trusted friends and family. So while this is generally adaptive, and I see there's a lot of people that are putting bingo in, want to be careful with this, right? Because some social support can be maladaptive, right? So I go back to a time at a different organization where I had like a really close friend. We're still really close friends today. And there was a lot of change going in the organization at the time. But every time we met, it was so negative, and it was all about how everything was wrong and how do we deal with this place. And so while our friendship is great and we, are still friends today, sometimes that social support can be maladaptive if it's not in the right direction from that perspective. Problem solving. So problem solving, if you're a planner like me, sometimes you want to sit down and you want to say, okay, this is what's going on. This is how I'm going to address it. It's kind of creating that plan of action, manageable steps. You might even be seeking advice from that perspective. All right, got a couple bingos on that one. That is obviously adaptive. Cognitive restructuring. This is really changing those negative thought patterns and perceptions that contribute to the stress. So I'm actually working on this with my personal coach right now as well, but it's like, hey, maybe there's more to learn to this story. How do I dive in here to see what else I'm missing to help myself deal with it better? So obviously that is an adaptive healthy. Got a couple bingos on that one. Next one, emotional eating. I think we probably don't have to read the definition for this, but obviously maladaptive, especially if it's, intense and off what your habitual, side is. So similar to substance overuse. Self-isolation. So sometimes when there's a lot of change or stress going on, we just want to be alone. And again, that might be okay for a few hours here or there, especially if you're an introvert. But if you're doing it continually and not addressing, that could be maladaptive. Physical activity, going out, getting some fresh air, moving your body. There is a ton of research. I mean, even if you just shake and dance to get the energy out, it's really, really adaptive into coping with change and stress. Negative self-talk, obviously maladaptive. I see some bingos still coming in. Maladaptive, so overworking. And I have a huge, I'm a recovering overworker myself, but this is sometimes when change occurs, especially if you have been through like a reduction in force or significant organizational changes, and especially women tend to just overwork. I just got to work. I got to keep going. In a month, I'll get to my exercise plan and all the good things that are going to happen. If I just outwork this, I will be in a good spot to just, we'll get through it that way. And again, that is not good for your overall emotional well-being. And so finding the ways to, use strategies to do the appropriate amount of work so you're not burning yourself out, so your brain and your body are ready to deal with that change in stress. And then obviously healthy lifestyle choices are adaptive. So kind of, clear which is adaptive or maladaptive, but it's important that, as you go through change, we're all hardwired to go below the line. I'll talk about what that means here shortly. But it's very important to have that self-awareness of like, wow, like I am, not following my exercise plan, or I'm overworking. I'm not, keeping my commitments with my family, or when I come home, my daughter, I can't even play with her. I'm too tired. Like, it's really important to have that self-awareness so you can kind of course correct and pivot over to the adaptive side. All right, so I want to talk, I've mentioned above the line, below the line a lot. I just love this model. I'm kind of obsessed with it. If you were at the RV Leadership Conference, I spoke about it. And I love, it's just a very simple technique to have the self-awareness if you're feeling yourself above or below the line. I do have a video. I'm hoping that it plays well. Brittany and I tested it out here.
Location, location, location. Brought to you by the Conscious Leadership Group. Find them on the web at www.conscious.is. Animation by Graham Franks. www.grahamfranks.com. One question that conscious leaders ask themselves over and over is, where am I? To support leaders in locating themselves as they ask the question, where am I? We offer this tool, a line, a simple black line. At any moment, all leaders and all people are either above the line or below the line. Our location describes how we're being with what is occurring in our life right now. If we're above the line, we are open, curious, and committed to learning. If we are below the line, we are closed, defensive, and committed to being right. Stop right now and simply ask yourself, where am I? In this now moment, am I above the line or below the line? Typically, when people are below the line, they believe certain things about the world. For example, they believe there is not enough. It could be that there's not enough money, or time, or space, or energy, or love. People below the line also believe that their story about the situation is right. People below the line also believe that there is a threat out there. Something or someone is threatening their desire for approval, control, or security. And people below the line see the situation as serious. The deeper below the line they are, the more serious things look. People below the line tend to behave certain ways as well. They tend to cling to an opinion, find fault and blame, gossip, explain, rationalize and justify, get overwhelmed, and avoid conflict or pursue conflict for the sake of winning. When people are above the line, they believe that learning and growing are more important than being right. They believe that all people and circumstances are their allies, here for their growth. They believe that from a distance, almost everything is funny. People above the line live in curiosity, listen deeply, speak unarguably, question all their beliefs, and live a life of play. Now, knowing what you know about being above or below the line, where are you? One thing to know as you consider this question. We are hardwired to go below the line. Literally, our brain is programmed to perceive threat. And when it does, a chemical cocktail courses through our veins, and we go below the line. This reaction was designed to help us survive in the presence of a real threat to our physical survival. An issue for modern-day leaders is that often our brains can't tell the difference between a threat to our physical survival and a threat to our ego or identity. We react and get defensive when we experience a threat to our ego. So in many ways, being below the line is natural and normal. But when we are below the line, we're not in a state, literally brain state, of high creativity, collaboration, innovation, and relational connection. We're simply trying to survive. Leaders today can't thrive if they're in survival mode. So the first activity of conscious leadership is location, location, location. In this now moment, where am I? Telling ourselves and others the truth about our current location begins the great conversation.
Okay, so yeah, I just love that line. I mean, I use it with leaders all the time, but I think in general, it's a good way of like, as we're going through change to say, wow, I'm acting out of fear, or I'm acting, out of anxiety, or my ego feels attacked, and you're, kind of demonstrating behaviors from that perspective versus saying, hey, what can I learn here? How can I get the right answers? What information do I need? How can I be creative in this situation? So I think it's a simple, sometimes when you're feeling overwhelmed, especially if you're going through a lot of personal or professional change, just taking a deep breath and thinking about the line is important from that perspective.
I do
Oh,
believe
so
there's a question in the chat. Is there a question in the chat? From A Sands? I see a hand raised. Maybe I don't. Sorry. Okay, not anymore. Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, feel free to jump in and ask any questions. I'll just talk forever. So, another thing with above and below the line that I want to share this model, I actually have it laminated here in my office, is the learner judger mindset. So if you kind of like take the line right through here, again, in change, we're hardwired to go below the line as that video shared. Sometimes we take this judger mindset, like whose fault is this? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with them? Why are they so stupid? Why bother? I'm such a failure. Versus taking that learner mindset, which is really that kind of growth mindset, the above the line mindset, which is like, what can I understand here? What happened? What do I want for myself? What assumptions am I making? Where can I get more information to validate or, invalidate those assumptions? So I just love this. This model's from a book called Change Your Questions, Change Your Life, which a lot of coaches that I know use this book and this model, but I think you can actually Google it, the learner judger mindset, and you can print it out. But just another way to look at it from that perspective, especially as you're going through change. Just obviously asking yourself where you are. Sometimes taking a breather, taking care of yourself, doing some self-reflection is helpful. Key skills that can help navigate change. I won't read this all to you, but it'll be in the chart pack and in the recording for you to look through. Because I want to get to initiating change, because some folks mentioned that. I want to make sure we have enough time. So self-reflection on how you react to change. Again, I think if you want to be better at it, or it sounded like at the beginning of the session, there's a lot of people going through that, BC, or wanting to initiate change. I think it's, spending some time doing some reflection, maybe looking at those above the line resources, rewatching that video. Think about a time that you recently went through change and how you reacted to it. Because, to navigate change really, really well, which is what I know you want to do, you have to understand where your current reaction to change comes from and how you want to change it. 2, journal about recent changes. I have some journal prompts on the next page here as a resource as well. And then I love just to learn about how brains work and myself. I'm always taking quizzes, and this is a quiz. It's free. It's from Positive Intelligence, and it's a self-sabotage assessment. It probably takes about 10 to 15 minutes to take it. And you get a nice little report at the end of it. And it's a really good way to see how things like stress, self-doubt, hypervigilance rise for you. And it's another understanding tool to see how you are impacted by change and especially stress as well. And then the journal prompts, again, reflecting on past changes. There's some very specific questions here. Understanding your reactions, setting goals for improvement. Visualizing is really important. Like, hey, the next time this happens, how do I want to show up? What does that look like for me? Maybe learning from others, someone that you admire that handles change well. How can you incorporate these qualities and strategies into yourself? Maintaining balance, and then, again, embracing that growth mindset, staying above that line. Okay, so now initiating change. I have a few things here, and then we'll hopefully leave about 10 minutes for questions. So initiating change. Obviously we talked about change, talked about navigating change and your emotions and how to do that for yourself and a plan for getting better at it. But it sounded like a lot of folks have, have the need or desire to want to ignite change in their life. And we weren't clear on whether that was personal or professional, but I want to start with, hey, maybe there's some catalysts for change. Obviously, kind of a catch-all is personal dissatisfaction. Maybe you're feeling unhappy or unfulfilled. For me, I feel like I always want to lose weight. I always want to be a more present mother. And so, those are some things that I'm working on with my coach. Desire for growth. Maybe you're wanting to learn or do something different. Health concerns. Maybe you're facing health issues or wanting to improve your physical well-being. Financial pressures, relationship issues. Again, we talked about this at the top of the hour, which is, hey, maybe it's like, hey, maybe I need to go, get a counselor with my husband. Maybe I need to really work on this really grindy relationship I have at work, or with the next summer series coming up and having, those courageous conversations. Maybe you have to have a conversation with your boss or someone you work with from that perspective, career ambitions, life transitions, et cetera. So there's a lot of catalysts for change. And if it sounds like some of you have already made the decision that you have a catalyst and now you want to ignite the change in your life. So I want to just share a little bit about, a change that I'm igniting. I promised I wouldn't cuss during this. So WTF is who's turning 40. I'm turning 40 in November. And it's really caused me to think about, okay, I've lived this way 40 years. Like, what do I want my next 10, 30, 10, 20, 30, 40 years to look like for the rest of my life? And that's what I was encouraged to get the NLP coach that I mentioned at the top of the hour. And so you guys are familiar with Brene Brown. I love her. She does a lot of like leadership and books and, keynote speaking and things of that nature. And so I'm really looking at my next 40 years of being really on this green side of her wholehearted living thoughts, and especially this 8, like this calm and this stillness. And personally, I'm trying to move away from this lifestyle of anxiety and productivity and feeling like I always have to be crossing something off my to-do list or being productive, and I don't have time for rest and play, and it seems very anxious. So I'm very deliberately working with a coach and with certain habits to try to cultivate this calm and stillness into my life from that perspective. And so what I'll say is whatever it is that you're looking to, cultivate the change for, I think the first step obviously is self-awareness, which a lot of you all have, but then it's figuring out who are the resources and what's the plan to make it happen. I'm happy to be a resource if any of you want to talk through that one-on-one as well. But just summary and call to action. Obviously, we talked about change sucks, but it's good for growth. And yes, growth is good. Location. Where are you during those times of change and stress? Are you above the line, below the line? And then the call to action, right? What is calling you to change or make a change in your life? And how can you, implement that to, make your life the life you want to live? And then 2 last things, and we'll open up for questions. I mentioned, comfort zone is a beautiful place, but nothing ever grows there. And then change is hard, but we got this. No, that was a lot of talking. So feel free if you guys have any questions to drop them in the chat or speak up from that perspective.
Well, Chantel loves her. So Alissa, you have a fan.
I do.
Yay!
No, Brene Brown. I love Brene Brown, but I also love you, Alissa. You've done a great job.
Yeah,
Thank you.
this was really great. I don't know if it's a question, but just, you have feelings, you acknowledge your feelings, but a lot of time those feelings are below the line because that's easy, and, just acknowledging that, okay, they're real, but are they productive? I think is the epiphany, that's hard. And then I think someone mentioned earlier about educating others about change. And so I thought that video was really good. I don't know if we could post the link in there, but how have you used that video within your organization to kind of initiate that above and below the line conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I've actually played it at leadership meetings, especially when I notice like, leaders are going at each other and acting below the line. It's like, hey guys, I saw this video. We should, because, maybe that will drive some self-awareness. But we do leadership circle profile here at Thetford. We probably put 5 leaders through it so far, but it's an actual visual that shows the like reactive tendencies. And again, sometimes the reactive tendencies get you where you are, but like in order to be the leader to be aspirational and grow, you need to be more on the proactive top side. So it's an actual visual assessment that we use as well.
I like it. I like it because you can say stop. You don't have to say like stop gossiping, but you can say, are you above or below the line?
Yeah.
It's more of a professional way to
I'm outlining the chart and the change, I think helps.
Yeah.
There's something to be said about posting that around as people walk by and they take a look and they think to themselves, okay, where am I in this chart? I see this change. Now am I above or below the line? Could help a lot of people, just recognizing it. Sometimes we don't even recognize it in ourselves.
I struggle too. I mean, working in HR and just having to go through a lot of change, like you have obviously personal reactions to it, but oftentimes I'm working with people that are like, kind of in a stage and it's like, for me, I'm like, oh, let's go, just move. You can get past it. And I think like we all have to realize, like, even if you feel like you're operating above the line, you need to help support people around you and not and accept how they feel and help bring them with you, if you will. Which is challenging, and I think just being supportive and recognizing, I don't think you have to like show them videos or pictures or anything like that and be like, hey, watch this video before we meet next time. but help sit with them in the feeling and like help them understand or work through it or just offer to be a resource.
I think that's so important, especially as a leader. I know like I'm a change agent. I love change for the good, especially when you control it. It's a lot easier, right? But for people that are experiencing what you've just changed, being that resource and being there for them to ask questions and walk them through the process of why this change is happening too helps a lot. So I think you're right, being that person there for the person that's having a hard time and asking the right questions, maybe.
I have a question. It's kind of too long to type in the chat. So I'm a sales manager with the team that is selling into the market, obviously. And with the changes in the market over the last couple of years, like you mentioned, the RV industry's craziest, wildest roller coaster ride that you'll ever see. I know my sales team is very driven to win, right? They want to sell, they want to win new business. But of course, we're in a market that isn't exactly thriving. So I think they're feeling some of the stresses this year that they're not getting the wins they would hope to have. And I think it obviously brings them into a different state of mind. And I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but if anybody has any suggestions on how to continue to keep their team motivated in a market that is down with positive reinforcement about other things, I'd be open to suggestions from that perspective.
I'll kind of give, it sounds like you're already doing it, but celebrating small wins, even if it's like minuscule, or even if it's like just keeping the business we have, versus the new sales. I mean, I think it's just important to stop and, celebrate those small wins. But, I think, again, it sounds like you're already doing it. Just communicate, guys, we're in a super tough spot. It does suck. And like, this is what we can do to navigate and have those open conversations. I think in you know, allowing people to share how they feel, because sometimes you might be surprised at what they're feeling or how they're feeling, because maybe they're scared.
Mhm.
And you know, hey, I understand you're scared. Like, I think being vulnerable as a leader and saying, hey, I'm also scared. And you know, I'm here for you, and this is how, you know, we can win as a team in a time when it's hard to win, if that makes sense.
Yep. I try to spend a lot of time reinforcing that while you're not going to win anything huge in this year, that you can, like you said, small wins where you could use the time to do something different that still could be considered to win, even though it doesn't classify as a sale, right? You know, you build the relationships that you have with the accounts you have, or you build new relationships within those accounts, or you go find different things. I mean, obviously you can win in other ways other than selling something. So wasn't certain if anybody else was going through the same thing, and just thought I'd throw that out there.
I'll share. I am going through the exact same thing. Our sales department, I'm in finance, and yet they keep coming to me almost weekly with their concerns. And I'm pretty much doing the same thing that you're doing, is just reminding them that this is the industry that we're in, and we've been here before and we've survived. So trying to pull on past experience, and then also reminding them where we are and that it will get better. We just have to be patient.
Thanks for that.
Looks like there's a question. How do you address a particularly negative employee who always has a negative outlook, no matter what you say to them? I'm laughing a little bit because I, like, my mom always taught me, kill them with kindness. And you know, I'll say, like, you're not going to win everyone over. And you know, and I'm also not a huge fan of toxic positivity. We need to be honest and vulnerable about where we're at with things. But if they are a person in your organization, they're going to stay in your organization, they're not going to change, but they're meeting the purpose and, you know, of whatever job they have, their leadership's fine with them. I would personally, I limit my interactions with them. I just don't have the energy to, you know, get to that level. And I try to just keep it business and go on from that perspective. You know, being in HR, obviously, you know, I've had conversations with people that are negative that maybe have crossed the line of being unprofessional. And I think if you're in that situation, you know, partnering with your HR partner on tactics from that perspective is a good advice too.
Also, if your company has core values and have established those, and you know, reminding that's not our mission, vision, or values. And I think, you know, what are we here? Why are we here? What are we doing? And then I also think being specific, when you say this is how people feel around you. Some awareness, I feel like, but those are hard conversations. Yeah. Some people are born negative. That's a hard one.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Alissa, for
Yes.
you know, stepping in. This was a fantastic session. I absolutely loved it. Learned a lot. I love learning. And so just for all members out there, to remind you that next month we have negotiating, which is an in-person that you can sign up for. And I think that's August 8th. And then we also have another webinar later in August.
Difficult conversations on August 22nd.
And also to remind you, we have the symposium, we have an open house breakfast going on, and in August is Women's Equality Day. So on August 26th, we are planning an in-person social event at the RV Technical Institute, along with RVIA, RVTI, and RVDA. We're all coming together to do a nice little networking event. So I hope to see you all there. Thank you again for attending today. You guys all rock. Alissa, can't thank you enough. And I hope you guys all have a great rest of your week.